there is a consumer who's willing to pay. We guys need to engage with each other far more instead of being confrontationalist about it. Let's build the business again. There are always solutions. We have to make sure, yes, we have to protect our revenue as an industry, but we also have to make sure that we are growing the industry.
Namaste and welcome to Music Mehfil India. Our guest today is Atul Churamani, who is a veteran of the Indian music industry. Over his career, he has worked with several prominent music labels, has set up the digital business for Saregama, and has established the only independent publishing company in India. This conversation is a masterclass in music business fundamentals. And along the way, he has shared several wonderful, delightful stories about how some of the music of the 90s came about. I'm Aruna Jade, a composer and singer, and it is my privilege to host this series where we speak to the Davids and the Goliaths, the loners and the tribes of the music scene. For these are the stories of music from India. What is a music publisher?
So there are two parts to the music business. One is the record label business, which is what we're familiar with in India. So that involves the recording itself. And a record label, the company that owns and distributes the sound recordings, they deal with the artist, with the performer. Music publishing involves the composition and lyrics. And publishers deal with composers and writers. So what you call songwriters. So we deal with songwriters. We are not necessarily involved with the artists.
In India, how many major music publishers exist?
I think we're the only independent Indian music publisher, because I think everyone else has a record label. Ashil Fowler, Deep Emotions, he used to have a standalone music publishing company, but now he has a record label as well. Sony Music Publishing has just entered India, so obviously they will be a major. So they have entered as a standalone music publisher. And they have now got the rights to the Sony Music India catalog as well. So they're behaving like a regular publisher would, as the business understands it.
So who is on your roster at the moment?
So we don't have a very large roster. We have, so it started with the band Soulmate from Shillong. So Rudy and Tipriti are on the roster. There's a whole bunch of people you may not have heard of. Lokesh Madan, Hitesh Madan, Merlin D'Souza. So a lot of people who are creating music that perhaps I understand. So you'll find a lot of those. We have a younger lot as well. We have Moksh. We've just signed Moksh. We have Shuman. We've got, so it's a mix. But are there huge names on it? Badshah, Yo-Yo Honey Singh? No, we don't have those.
All right. So when did Turnkey Publishing begin?
Actually, it began when I couldn't get a job, I guess, in any other company. But technically, I think 2013 is when we registered. We started operating in 2014. So I was working with record labels for 24 years. And then, the business was in a state of flux at that point.
Right.
I was with Saregama. And it was about selling the catalog. So I sound like a Sindhi, but I'm actually a Punjabi and I like to think I'm creative. So it's beyond me to sit and haggle over money, for long periods of time. So it wasn't interesting to me to try and sell, Kishore Da, Lata Mangeshkar, etc., the Saregama catalog. That's not what I wanted to do.
Sell it to who though?
With all these, services that were coming up, the mobile phones, the ringback tones and all that.
Okay.
So it was basically about negotiating with them, trying to get better deals and MGs and stuff like that. That's not my thing, And I'd been involved with the creative part of the business. In fact, the publishing business had always excited me. I'd set up the whole publishing business, the network for Saregama, etc. So I'd done the concerts for Saregama. Sonu Nigam and the Birmingham Symphony Orchestra, Rahat and the Symphony Orchestra, Asha Ji with Shujat Khan. So, to me, my headspace was somewhere else. It was something that I don't think I was very good at doing anyway. So if you ask me, to sit and negotiate money, I can't. I'm not really a negotiator. And I was also watching the market and seeing how independent music was now starting to come up. And obviously these opportunities, iTunes was around. So the opportunity for young musicians to record and release their own music was there. And obviously nobody knows anything about publishing. Right? It's the smallest part of the business and something that's unimportant for most people, even today. And then I had friends at places like Rajshri Music, Shimaru, East Coast, the Malayalam label, so people like that who hadn't actually exploited their work outside of India. And because I'd set up the whole publishing business for Saregama outside India, I had a lot of connections in the publishing world.
Right.
So I said, okay, why don't I start a publishing company, help the artists, as well as, help these labels who have publishing to exploit their works in the international markets. So that was the thought behind Turnkey.
So when you say exploit, what does that actually mean?
So that means, getting the registrations done at societies internationally, in the major markets, looking for sync opportunities, looking for sampling opportunities, trying to work with international singer-songwriters as well. So there's a whole world out there if you choose to, but, it takes time. Because when you're starting from scratch, when your registrations are not done, your metadata is not correct, then you're going to spend a lot of time on the admin part of it.
Yeah.
And that's something that unfortunately takes a lot of time, but it is critical to the business.
Oh. Okay, since you mentioned admin, if you could tell us about the different types of publishers. Rather.
There is only one kind of publisher. So, there's a music publisher. There is also a publishing administrator. Now, the difference between the two is that an administrator will do your registrations with the society and collect your monies. So they'll do, the metadata bit of it. And they will do the accounting end of it from revenue that is auto-generating. So it's generating when your songs are streamed on platforms, etc., when they're played in public performance. Everything that the society collects. So that's the mechanical and the performing right, which is essentially being handled by an administrator. Where a music publisher comes in is what I was talking about, when you have, let's say, collaborations going between artists. So, for example, Salim Suleiman, they released Bhumi 2023 now. There's a song by Papon with an African artist, a Nigerian artist called Niniola. Niniola is signed with Cobalt. That's how that deal happened. So Salim called me and he said, Papan's got this amazing song. Do you have someone we can work with internationally? So I reached out to Cobalt. They suggested Niniola and it's come out beautifully. So a publisher will do that. A publisher will do the creative end of it. And then, of course, there are the sync deals and everyone is, talking about sync. So you will pitch for sync. You're in touch with music supervisors. You're in touch with sub-publishers across the world. And there are also sampling opportunities that come in, So these are other forms, adaptations, translations. So you're always looking at how to generate more from the creative rather than just the admin, although the admin is the major part of the business.
Since you mentioned Cobalt, how has it been working with publishing houses outside of India?
It's fantastic. I mean, again, because of my experience with Saregama and dealing with international publishers, there's a familiarity in the way the business works. But it was the first time that we were actually going to publish an international publisher in India. And that has its own challenges, nothing to do with us, the way the setup is. So we had Cobalt come in first. On the back of which we got another very iconic publisher, not very large, but very iconic from the UK called Fairwood Music Publishing. And then a friend introduced me to an amazing character called Big Swede. So he has his own thing, calls it Big Sven Studios, I think. So he's a Swede who's based in LA.
Oh, okay.
And he's a one-man army. And if you look at the amount of syncs that he's got from, all those old Star Plus serials that we used to watch, Mentalist and, etc., etc. He's got music in all of them.
Oh.
He's got an amazing ad, the Mercedes ad with Roger Federer. That's his music. He's an absolutely amazing character. So someone introduced me to him. We got talking and, I just thought that he'd be great to do. So we had these three on board. And then a year after we got Cobalt, I met up with the BMG guys because I'd dealt with them with, a label, a publisher they'd bought out. So I happened to meet them in London. We chatted and stuff like that. So, then BMG came in. And then we've just signed with 3 French music publishers. We've signed with an American one called Music. So I think we have about a dozen international catalogs now that we represent in India.
Oh, wow. That's incredible. So what are the challenges, as you mentioned, the system is set up in a way?
Yeah, so the challenge is the system because the system has been, we've been a record label industry, right? Because how it evolved was that in 1901, what was later called EMI in England, they set up their first office outside of England, which was in Calcutta in India. That was called the Gramophone Company of India, which is today Saregama. So it was a record label that started in 1901. And they pretty much went for about 30 years. And then Mr. Saha, his father, Mr. Saha's father started Indian Record Company, the Indian Recording Company, and the Hindustan Music Products, they called it. So two labels, so to speak. Hindustan was a label of Inreco. So in 1932, they started their company, which was a record label. In 1969, Polydor came into India as a record label. In 1982, CBS came into India, which was a record label. So it was the record label business that was being done. And the whole focus was actually manufacturing and selling LPs. And that's how the business evolved in India. It was always record, record, record. Then in the 80s, we had T-Series, Tips, and Venus come up. So they were doing what everybody else was doing. So they were creating records. And because you were a music entity, and there were no music publishers separately sitting in India, all the rights were given to the record entity. So that's how labels became publishers. And nobody bothered with publishing. And, you've seen a lot of stuff on the internet about how our music directors in the past had taken songs, international songs, and reworked them, etc. Now, if you had those publishers sitting in India, they would have been legitimately licensed. Right? That's the way the business works. But because the publishers never came to India, whom do you get the rights from? And, we didn't have the internet back in the 1930s. So how do you reach out to people? Awareness was low. Facility of reaching out to people was low. Knowledge was low.
And did people even discover that this was happening?
I'm sure they did. It's a very normal way of thinking. This is a tribute to a song I love. You've created something, I love it. So I'm going to do a version of it and make it even bigger. There's nothing wrong with this thinking. But yes, there's a copyright involved. And if the owner of that copyright is sitting there, then you can do a legitimate license. Now, that's what happened in India. You didn't have the publishers. And I give full credit to Ashil Fowler, whom I mentioned earlier. So Ashil actually is very strange because when I was in Magnasound in the late 80s, early 90s, Ashil was the attaché at the French embassy in Delhi.
Oh.
And he walked into our office one day and we sat and we chatted about various things in the music business. And he was the only guy who understood when I said music publishing. So we got talking and blah, blah, blah. And later in an interview somewhere, Times of India, I think it was, some interview of mine where I said the only person who understands about music publishing in India is Ashil Fowler. So I'm given to understand that Ashil took that cutting. And he went to a French company. He's French. So he went to a French company called Delphine Records, which had Richard Clayderman. And he said, Clayderman is popular in India. I will start getting you mechanical royalties from India, which is a publishing royalty, right? Which you're supposed to get when the records are sold. And by that time, I was in Virgin. And he came to Virgin. And we had the rights for Delphine. So he then put 2 and 2 together and he came to us and he said, listen, you're selling the records. You need to pay the publishing. And hats off to Mohan Mahapatra, who was the MD of the late Mohan Mahapatra, unfortunately. He agreed. So publishing royalties were paid to Delphine. And then Ashil went to BMG and he said, listen, Delphine is getting mechanicals in India. why aren't you getting yours? So that's how the conversation started. And then Ashil was actually the person who pushed a lot for it. And he's very well versed with copyright law, etc.
Yeah.
And I would give him a lot of credit for actually, making people aware. So he came to Saregama. Saregama had some international labels, etc. So he's someone who actually pushed this.
Yeah.
But it wasn't, that was maybe at the turn of the century.
Yeah.
So for 1 century, we've been a record label country, which is why people don't understand publishing. And when users, are asked to pay 2 separate copyrights, they're like, why? Because you own the
Yeah.
recording and you own the publishing. I'm paying for the music. How you divide it is your problem. So the problem in India is that they don't understand the right, that there is a separate right.
Yeah.
If they understand it, they don't comply with it. Okay? So, for example, we have All India Radio,
Yeah.
which is a government organization.
Oh, yeah.
That government organization does not pay IPRS for the music that they play for Indian composers.
Yeah.
Now, hang on to your hat. They pay IPRS
Uh-huh.
for international composers,
Lovely.
which means they recognize the right.
Yeah.
It's a government entity. The government, it was a different government when 2012 happened, this government. But everybody in power, whether in that government or this government, everyone supported the 2012 amendment,
Yeah.
which has said that publishing royalties have to be paid.
Of course.
It is
yeah.
any contract that doesn't recognize that or tries to do away with that is illegal. It's a void contract. The streaming services are 85% of the business today. The international ones, Spotify, Apple, Amazon, etc., they pay IPRS.
Yeah.
The domestic ones,
Yeah.
JioSaavn, Wink, Ghana, have never paid IPRS.
Yeah.
And hats off again to Hangama, Neeraj Roy, because 2 years ago or so, they went in and got an IPRS license. So slowly people are starting to understand.
Is it a hard concept to understand?
If you don't want to pay, yes, it's very difficult to understand. Right? But if you recognize the fact that Javed Akhtar does not sing, and pick a name, Shantanu Moitra does not
Yeah.
sing, how do they get paid? Right?
Yeah.
So there is, and India is a signatory to the Berne Convention. That was 1886. In 1886, we said yes, composers and authors are supposed to be paid. Till today, we don't pay. So that's not the end of the story. So we
Yeah.
have 1,000+ television stations.
Yeah.
Only Sony and now the Z network
Yeah.
pay IPRS. Better than that is the establishment story. So public performance, when you go out into shops and malls and restaurants, etc., they're supposed to pay. They play music, they're supposed to pay.
Yes.
So I did a working the other day, and my number says that about 7,000 establishments, restaurants, etc., pay IPRS
In Mumbai?
in India.
That's...
Close to 8,000.
Okay, that can't be right.
No. So when we had COVID, the Federation of Hotels, the FHRAI, which is always in battle with IPRS and PPL, they went to the government and said, we need support. We have 4 million establishments in the organized sector and 2.3 crores in the unorganized sector that need help. These are the
Right.
guys we are saying need to take a license, because everyone plays music. So if you think
Yeah.
that 2.3 crore, in the unorganized sector, the dhabas, etc., don't play music, they've always played music. They've always had transistors. Today it's playing off cell phones, it's playing
Yeah.
off various other devices. It's no big deal. Pay 100 rupees a year, right? And we did a calculation. So I started this thing with an article I wrote in Music Plus many years ago, saying that if we got our Public Performance Act together,
Yeah.
our industry would be raking in 10,000 crores from public performance in establishments alone. Today, about 4 or 5 years after that article was written.
Yeah.
I think between IPRS, PPL, Novex, and RMPL, I think we're about 300 crore.
But what is the argument that AIR is giving? Why don't they want to pay?
They don't want to pay. Finished. You'll hide behind some law. You'll find some lawyer who will find something. So it's a discussion you can have forever.
What would such a license cost to an
It
establishment?
depends on the establishment size. I can't give you a number because an establishment could be 50 square feet.
Mm-hmm.
It could be 5,000 square feet.
Okay.
It could be a shopping mall, which is whatever. So it goes by size.
Right.
And these are rates that are regulated by the government of India. These are not rates that I wake up one day and say, "Acha, chalo, itna charge kar lo."
Yeah.
Right? These are ratified by the IPRS and the sound recording. So it used to be
Yeah.
PPL, but even now PPL, they have to ratify rates at the AGM. But RMPL is the official body that is recognized by the government.
Oh.
So all of them have rates. They are regulated. They're supposed to put up their rates. You can get online licenses. It's not a big deal. How much is it actually going to cost you? Like I said, if you charge a dhaba guy 100 rupees a year, right?
Yeah.
For him, what is it? Nothing. But you're going to clock in, let's say, another 23 crores for the industry.
Right.
23? No, 230 crores. Sorry, 230 crores. Right? So, where is the problem?
How would this get distributed? Like, what would the calculation be?
So every society globally, this is called unlocked income because you don't have what's playing.
Yeah.
So everyone has a distribution scheme that needs to be created, which is based on surrogates. Okay, so you'll take radio logs, you will take streaming logs, you'll take, if there's physical product, you'll take physical sales logs,
Yeah.
and you'll arrive at percentages that will belong to publishers, composers, authors.
Yeah.
So you arrive at a distribution scheme. Every year, the distribution scheme is passed by the annual general meeting. It's transparent. So in the event that you have money which you can't identify,
Yeah.
then you have to have some logical way of distributing it. And that's what they do.
Do we have something in place as of now?
Of course, we've always had something in place. There is no issue at all.
And how does it work?
So I can't get into the mechanics of everything, but they have what they call surrogates, I think. So there is radio logs they take. There is streaming services logs that they get. There are YouTube logs that they get. In India, unfortunately, we really don't have physical sales. So it has to be based on the streaming thing. That's where the consumption is coming from.
Right. I always wondered who verifies the numbers that come from streaming sites and logs,
So
basically these logs.
These are government organizations. They're open to scrutiny. They're open to audit. You want to go file a PL, file a PL. You have access to their accounts. Their accounts are up on their websites.
Right. But I mean, those are
Anyone can do it.
financial accounts.
Of course, financial accounts. Yeah.
The streaming numbers or the...
So the streaming
play-
numbers come from the users, which is Spotify, Apple, YouTube, etc.
Yeah.
Are they fudging figures? You'll have to ask them. I don't know. I've not found that. See, look at the volume of data.
Exactly.
Think about the army you'll need to fudge data. To what benefit?
To make more money for the companies. Yeah.
So Spotify is crying poverty today,
Yeah.
saying that 70% is being paid out to the industry. I suppose they're paying out 70%. These companies are audited by their auditors. So if they're fudging figures, they're fudging figures. I have nothing to say over there.
Okay.
But one assumes that people are honest. One
Yeah.
assumes that because there are corporate compliances, etc., that they will be audited. And
Wha-
don't forget, all these organizations, IPRS, the sound recording societies, etc., they're all not for profit.
How do they make money?
They're not supposed to. It's not for profit. So they're allowed to keep up to 15% of revenue as their expenses.
Why do we have RMPL and PPL? Like, why are there so many?
So these are, like I said, there are two parts to the business. The label business and the publishing business.
Yeah.
Publishing business is IPRS, and the copyright law in India says that you can have only one society for one class of work.
Right.
So composition and lyrics are one class of work.
Correct.
Sound recording is a second class of work. Now, for years, PPL was the recognized society, but then they had trouble with, the government and complaints and this and that and the other. So the license was given to RMPL. But PPL still exists. And not to get too technical about it, but they're operating under Section 30 of the copyright law, like NOVEX, which says that you can represent those rights of the sound recording as a collective. Okay, so that's what they're doing, because I think there were 400 plus members of PPL. Now, to get out of PPL, go join an RMPL, which has a different management and all that, it's just too much. I mean, this is not the major business. PPL's turnover today is 140 crores. Divide that by the number of players in the market and their turnovers, etc. You're asking people to make a lot of effort for no real gain. What's going to do it? And the members had trust in PPL, and they wanted to continue with it. So that's the way it is.
What about artists whose songs are playing in establishments, or who basically need a music publisher but don't have one?
When you say music publisher, what do you mean?
Someone to collect for their composition.
The thing is that the performing rights societies, whether it's label or whether it's composition lyric, they govern two rights. Okay, so let's talk about the publishing part of it. They govern two rights. One is called the performing right.
Yes.
One is called the mechanical right.
Correct.
The performing right comes when you play songs in establishments like you were talking. Television, radio. That is all public performance. So that is what the society does. So they're the ones who collect. Individually, the publisher cannot collect. It's not possible. So if I have a hit song and that hit is playing in every mall in Japan and Germany and in Australia and in America, how does one publisher go from shop to shop and say, give me money?
So that's why publishers also register with...
So globally, they recognize this, and they said we will have collecting societies that will deal with multiple users. So the concept is, when there is one to many, many users, one owner, it goes through the society.
Right.
When it's a one-on-one, then the publisher comes into play. So for example, for a sync deal, Karan Johar wants one song for one film. One publisher can easily deal with him. But shopping malls across the world, no chance. So therefore, in every country, you have a collecting society, and they collect the money from public performance, radio, television establishments. They have a reciprocal agreement under CSAC. CSAC is the global body. It governs the running of all these societies. So then they remit the money to the society where that music belongs. The society then pays it out to the composer.
Right. Now, a lot of artists today are self-published. What happens then?
So they can register with the society as composer, author and publisher.
Right. So, but what happens in the publisher end?
Let's say 120,000 new songs a day. If you put all the publishers in the world together, they couldn't possibly sign so many acts. Right? So there will be a lot of people who will be self-published. There are a lot of people who want to be self-published. They don't want publishers. So there's happy coexistence in the world. People who think they need a publisher will come to a publisher. People who don't think they need a publisher will not come to a publisher.
But the publishing royalty is paid out.
Of course.
And so people who don't have a publisher are missing out on that.
No, they're getting the money from the society. You see, societies are mandated. Whatever collections come, and especially in India, we have a clear law. It says 50-50. 50% to publisher, 50% to composer, author. In whatever shares are sitting here. Now, if I'm an independent artist, I'm this and this. I collect 100%.
Is that assumed that if you're self-published?
No, when you register, you have to say who you are. I'm a composer, I'm an author, I'm a publisher.
Going back to music publishing, what was the publisher's job with the old technology versus the new tech?
It's the same job. The job hasn't changed. And the interesting thing is, copyright law has not changed since 1886, like I said, the Berne Convention. Formats change. So in those days, you had vinyl records, then you had cassettes, then you had CDs, then you had MP3s, etc., etc. And it's very easy for people to get confused between formats and rights. The rights remain the same. So if you have a mechanical royalty that goes to a composer author when a sound recording is consumed, and when I say consumed, in the physical world it was being sold. In the digital world, when it started, it was being downloaded. Today it is being streamed.
Yeah.
All three are a consumption.
Yeah.
So whenever the sound recording is consumed, a certain percentage of money goes to the publisher, who then pays to the composer author, or the society pays directly to composer author. Nothing has changed since 1886. That's why I said two parallel lines. And if you look at the global companies, so today Universal Music, there's Universal Music, the record label UMG is the Universal Music Group. There's UMG, which has the Universal Music label, and it has Universal Music Publishing, UMP. Sony Music has Sony Music, the record label. In India, here it's SMI, Sony Music India, and SMP, Sony Music Publishing. Warner has Warner Chappell.
Yeah.
And Warner Chappell, the publishing company, and Warner Music, the record label. And do you know why? Because there's a conflict of interest. Okay, it's very simple to understand.
Yeah.
As a record label, if you have one recording of a song, all the money in the world that generates from that, the consumption of that recording, goes to one person, the owner of that song.
Right.
But if you have many versions of the song, the money gets divided between different recordings going to different labels.
Yeah.
Okay, so one example is Macarena. When it came out, it was number one in the US of many weeks. At number 7, the highest chart position. So Macarena was Los del Lobos. And number 7, Macarena, was Los del Rios, or vice versa, one of them, right? So there was a separate recording which belonged to a separate company. But the publisher must have been delighted because you had 2 in the top 10, which meant the writers were making more money. So inherently there's a conflict. The publisher wants more and more recordings of the same composition and lyrics, whereas the record label wants only one recording. So straight away there's a conflict.
Right.
So you have to have a different entity. This guy is pushing something else.
Yeah.
This guy is pushing something else. That's the concept.
This system, can it be simplified?
It is simple. So people sitting outside tend to get confused, but there are 6 copyrights in composition lyrics and 4 in recordings.
No, the concept of it is fine. The execution process, could it be simpler?
Tell me what's complicated.
There is a lag in processing of royalties.
Okay. I'll give you 5 pieces of information to process.
Okay.
Now we are talking about 120,000 new songs a day being released across, pick a number of platforms. Every royalty payout probably today has trillions of lines of data to be processed. Do you know the computing power it takes? And then we guys, as music industry people, we load garbage metadata into their systems. And then we point a finger at them and say, hey, chor log hai.
Right. No, I'm not talking about that point. I'm saying, aren't there too many bottlenecks?
Give me an example.
Okay, from the time a song is heard to the time it generates revenue, aren't there too many people in between? That's all I'm asking.
Like who? Name people in between.
There is the platform.
Yeah.
Even when
there was a record shop back in the day. You never said, we don't need a record shop. The
That's
record
true.
shop is the platform. Where else are you going to hear the music?
Right. But I mean, the incentive structure has changed now for...
Nothing has changed.
Record shops had one job, which was to push the sales, right? Because that's how they made money. Everyone was in the value chain. Someone created music here, label with the artist. Everybody's job was to push sale of that music, distribute it as far and wide. But now there are platforms in between who need more people to stay for longer on their platforms. And they themselves now have their own owned content in the mix. Along with what has become of musicians, we are essentially vendors who are uploading their music, which is competing with their own content. And they're losing a lot of money in paying out royalties.
So in the old days with the physical product, you're absolutely right. It was very streamlined. Okay. The record label was the guy who owned the physical product.
Yeah.
He gave it to a distributor. So the distributor's job was to pick up physical product from a factory
Yeah.
and go and distribute it to shops.
Right.
Right. The shop's interest was to sell the music.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So when you sold the product, the higher the price you sold the product at, the more money you made.
Right.
Because they keep a margin. The margin in the days of physical product was 30%. They used to pay 70% to the copyright owners. It was divided 62% for the recording and 8% for the mechanical. Okay. That was the division. Everybody's interest was becho. The higher the price, the more money everyone made because the artist was also on royalties. So that was the concept.
Yeah.
And it worked for whatever reason that it worked. So many years ago when I was in Saregama and the digital streaming services were starting, we went to London. We met one of the now big players and we had no clue what it was. And they said, oh, but, so this is, so I kind of explained the whole thing. It was a little confusing. So I said, okay, so let me ask some questions. So you want me to give you the Saregama catalog free? No, not free. I said, if you say yes or no, then I'll understand things in my head. Right? So they said yes. I give you the music free, you give it free to the consumer. Yes. And because you're giving it free, a lot of people come to your platform. Yes. Okay. Because lots of people come, advertising comes.
Yeah.
Yes. From that advertising money, you pay me. Yes. And then people get so fed up with the advertising that they subscribe. And from the subscription money, you pay me. And yes. Okay. I get it. I said, okay, so I have a couple of questions. What after you give my music free? People don't come. Oh, that's not possible. I said, not much of an answer. But okay. So after people come, suppose advertisers don't come. Oh, that's not possible. And after advertisers come, you don't get enough subscriptions. That's not possible. I said, can you hear yourself talk? That's not possible. I said, what's plan B? Suppose it doesn't happen. There's no plan B. I said, I'm sorry. And I'm not a genius. So everyone has just said the same thing.
Right.
So then, they worked out that we'll give advances and we'll do this and we'll do that. So they got the business going. But my simple question is, who wrote your business plan? Did the music industry write your business plan? Or did you write your business plan? In that business plan, who said you will pay 70% to the labels?
Yeah.
You followed what was happening at the time.
Yeah.
Physical product, 70% went back to the copyright owners. When Steve Jobs started,
Yeah.
I remember Madonna had a big problem with him because she said, how can you sell everything at 99 cents? He said, no, we're trying to establish industry practice. So people get confused if you have multiple pricing. You have to have one price.
That's arbitrary.
So he established that there would be one price for one song. Okay? From that 99 cents, guess how much went back to the labels? 62%, 62 cents. 8 cents went to publishing. 70%. And I go back to my question. If you don't get enough advertising and you don't get enough subscribers, how will you manage? Ghana has had to go behind a paywall now because the business didn't work for them.
Yeah.
And this is what Spotify is crying about. Okay.
Yeah.
This is the crux of the problem. The reason why it works for Apple is because Apple's existence is not based on
Correct.
Apple Music.
Right.
They sell a lot of other products.
Yeah. Same
right?
goes for Amazon Music as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. So they are entities. Same for Google. The health of YouTube doesn't determine what happens at Google. Right.
Yeah.
So there are different businesses that they run, and they have generated these streaming services to attract consumers. Now look at JioSaavn. It's a telephone company.
Yeah.
Look at Wink. Airtel is a telephone company. So the two guys who were standalone trying to make money on the music streaming business, Ghana and Spotify,
Yeah.
they have a problem. Because, I say it again, their business model was not thought through.
Right.
It is your problem.
Yeah.
I went to a conference in Norway in 2013, 13. And I asked the question, I said, if Spotify was charging $10 a month as a subscription, today Why are you still at $10? The price of food has gone up, price of
Yeah,
cars
yeah.
has gone up, price of
Right,
petrol
right.
has gone up. Why is the subscription price the same? And I was told that no, because people are getting used to paying $10 now. If we change the price, then people won't subscribe. Okay, it's an argument. I mean, what
Yeah.
can you say? They have a point of view. I have a point of view. But one thing we have to understand is that we are all part of the same business.
Yeah.
And as long as we are in conflict with each other, the business will not grow.
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
So one obvious thing is to work together. And what's unfortunately happened is that the labels have come in with these big demands of advances, or as they call minimum guarantees in India, which continue to increase. So if the service is saying, listen, I'm not doing well, give me a break,
Yeah.
the labels have to look at it, because if these services go, and today 85% of our business is coming from streaming services, if this business were to collapse, where would we go? If you're not getting the 10,000 crores from the hotel industry, right, where are you going to go? So therefore, we need to work with each other. And I've always asked this question from the
Yeah.
days of Ringback Tones also. Number one, the premise of giving free music
Yeah.
to me was a bit warped. Okay, because if just taking a name, if an auto rickshaw driver is trying to make ends meet,
Yeah.
why are you trying to sell him a 30 rupee ringback tone? But they said, no, there were arguments of piracy, we will knock out piracy, we will do this, we will do that. So therefore the music had to be free, and the whole world, 8 billion people today, would be subscribed. It hasn't worked. We need to understand the problem and work with them. I have a simple solution to this, or a suggestion to this, right? If your $10 a month or 119 rupees a month over here cannot be changed, right? You can't increase it. I'm saying fine, let's decrease it. But when I join the service, when I subscribe, you're asking me language, what
Yeah.
genre do you prefer, what
Right.
artist do you prefer. Now, I'm a hardcore Hindustani classical listener. Okay, I want Pandit Bhimsen Joshi, I want Shubha Mudgal. Why are you giving me American hip hop in my subscription?
True.
Okay, so let's do one thing. Let's drop the $10. Let's make it $5. But $5 by genre. I'm willing to bet my life that people will subscribe to at least 3. So from $10 a month, you're going to go to $15 a month.
Right.
Perception being that you've dropped your price with the consumer.
The way television worked, where people started
Exactly.
paying for channels. Yeah.
Correct? So there is always a solution. The solution is not to be in conflict, because we are all part of the same team that is actually going to get paid by the consumer. So
And
we need to look
isn't-
at it
Isn't
differently.
it true that people are spending more on music now?
I mean, I don't know, because it's difficult to say. But when we're talking about consumption of product, but if you look at concerts,
Yeah.
120%. 120% they're paying. I was just talking to Naren when
Yeah.
I was on my way here, and I was asking him Lollapalooza ja raha, because they've doubled the prices, I think,
Yeah,
from
yeah.
last year. Right now, that's a sign that people are paying. So back in the day, people used to say 18% of revenue at concerts comes from ticket sales. Today they're saying it's 60%.
Wow.
Okay, so
Yeah.
that means people are spending more money, and that's my point again. So there is a consumer who's willing to pay.
Yeah.
We guys need to engage with each other far more instead of being confrontationalist about it. Right? Let's build the business again. Let's help Ghana. Let's help Spotify if they have a problem. Right? There are always solutions. We have to make sure, yes, we have to protect our revenue as an industry, but we also have to make sure that we're growing the industry. So that was one part of it. The
Yeah.
second part of it that you mentioned about own content. So interestingly, the one thing the industry did with Spotify was got them to sign saying that they would not create their own content.
Oh.
Okay.
And then what
So
happened?
so they can't.
Ah.
So like Amazon has done and Netflix has done, they can't. However, the guys who tried, JioSaavn went first, but they shut it down
Right.
because it didn't work.
So this is just pertaining to music.
Music.
Ah. Because
So-
podcasts wise, they do own a
So
lot
why
of
did
content.
podcast start? Podcast started getting pushed by labels, by platforms,
By
because they
platforms.
felt that they would pay less for music.
Yeah, that's
So is that engagement or conflict?
conflict.
That's my point.
Yeah.
You're doing it free for people.
Hmm.
I'm doing it free for you.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
Because we wish to engage.
So the thing is that there is a business to be done.
Yeah.
If we don't have conflict, there is a business to be done.
Yes.
How do you know people are not willing to pay for the podcast, to listen to the podcast? Let's not assume.
Yeah.
I've got so many people talking to me about, something they've heard on a podcast about business, something they've heard of many podcasts. People are listening to podcasts.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So the people who are creating these podcasts, they need to get paid. They need to become as big as music artists. Why not? If you have a popular podcast, of course you should be making money. But we have to work with the platforms. We can't do this in isolation.
What could the platforms do better?
Well, for one, like I said, they need to relook at the business model. So there's a lot of conversation about finding the super fan. What's a super fan? Now I believe the super fan is the guy who's going to pay money to watch you in concert. He's going to buy your merchandise.
Yeah.
He's the super fan. So what about that Lalu who was buying your cassettes and CDs? You were starting with the super fan.
Yeah.
But the business evolved where everyone had your music for free and you were
Yeah.
getting likes on Instagram and Facebook and wherever else. And suddenly you have millions of followers but no super fans. Now you're going to go back into those millions of people to find who will pay for your concerts and your t-shirts and call him a super fan.
Yeah.
Business has got a little...
Wonky.
You used a very polite word.
What do you think about the pie distribution way of distributing the monies between artists versus the artists get paid for their streams?
So that's... Okay, again, let's go back to the days of physical product.
Yeah.
I bought a Guns N' Roses CD. 30% went to the shop. 70%, 62% went to the label. They paid Guns N' Roses from that, whatever percentage they were paying.
Yeah.
So I didn't understand the whole concept of taking everyone's subscription money,
Yeah.
taking the advertising money, putting it in a pot and then saying, okay, now this is family plan, this is this plan, this is so many streams, that is... अरे यार उसने 10 रुपए दिए, एक बार गाना सुना, 10 रुपए का 70% दे दो ना उसको.
That's what.
I don't see why we need to complicate the business.
Yeah, that's.
I'm not intelligent enough, honestly, because I got 5.5% in maths in school, so I have a good reason not to understand all this.
No, but that does seem like unnecessarily complicated
Exactly.
math.
Yep.
Yeah.
So another conversation to be had, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Why are we sitting and complicating things? Make it simple. I'm sure they have a very good reason. But then people like me need to understand it. If I don't understand it, then chances are a lot of people don't understand.
Yeah. How do you go about curating festivals like Paddy Fields? And what inspired you to do so?
Paddy Fields is a very interesting one because it was actually Nesco, the Goregaon Exhibition Center. So Nesco owns that property and they have a lot of footfalls through the year. And they had a new CEO who was a friend's friend. And he said, listen, we want to harness these people. So why don't we create a couple of properties of our own?
Okay.
So one of the things was music, obviously. So they came and we chatted and I said, okay, let's try something which doesn't exist.
Okay.
And at that time in Bombay, there was no real folk fusion festival. Right? So we suggested, I think we gave them 3 ideas and they liked this. They said, let's do this folk fusion thing. But even then I told them, I said, listen, you're paying us. So it's in our interest to push it to you. But I would suggest you get an independent survey done and see if what we're saying is correct about the feasibility, etc., etc. So they actually did that. They spent money, they got a survey done and it pretty much gelled with what we were saying. So they said, let's go ahead, let's do it. So the idea was to bring folk music to an audience that is weaned on let's say, commercial music,
Yeah.
and who would not have an understanding of the music, the words, right? Because you don't understand the language of the music. It's easy to zone out. And we wanted to appeal to, let's say, the discerning listener. So we did it as 2 evenings, very comfortable, almost like a classical concert where you have, connoisseurs sitting and appreciating the music, etc. And we said we'll just do evenings, and it's going to be the experience of the music, and we had alcohol available, and we also said let's theme the food to the places where the states where the music is coming from. So specialty food from those states. And Nesco has a foods division, and they're excellent. They're amazing food. So we did all that, and then the first year we just put 4 artists one evening, 4 artists one evening. Went extremely well. So we said let's theme the festival, and our whole concept was come and see artists you've never seen.
Who were some of these artists?
So I'll tell you. So come and see artists you've never seen, or come and see artists you've seen doing something you've never seen.
Oh.
Okay, so that was the concept. So anyway, so the first year we got a mix of artists. We had Mame Khan perform. We had the Nuran sisters perform. A lot of people had not seen the Nuran sisters. We got Salim and Suleiman performing with the Manganyars for the first time. Okay, and I had done an album with them called Bhumi back in Virgin in 2000. So that was the genesis, and today, Bhumi's become what they're pushing. But it was the idea of that, again, see something that you've never seen. And Colonial Cousins hadn't performed together for I don't know how many years. So we got them to come back and perform. So it went down extremely well. Papon did a set of folk music songs. So the next year we said, you know what, we should theme the festival. We should have a theme. So I said, where does folk music originate? Like, what do you mean? I said, folk music is about stories.
Yeah.
Folk stories. Who tells a child the first story they hear?
Mom, grandparents.
Mom, grandmom. Normally not the man. So I said, folk music, let's pay tribute to the actual originators of folk, which is women. So I think we were the first festival that did an all-women's lineup. And in that, we got Tipriti from Soulmate. She had never done a set of Khasi songs. So we got Khasi musicians in. So Rudy kind of put it together. So we had the Soulmate band playing with Khasi musicians in their traditional costumes. She blew the place apart. It was just amazing. Then Shubha Mudgal agreed to do a full 1 hour set of UP folk songs. She'd never done a performance of UP folk songs before. So she curated, and there were some that she actually composed for the first time of writings and stuff like that. So that was, so again, it was something people hadn't seen. We got Sushila Raman in from London, and she performed. Then we got, the next year we said, okay, let's do a combination of classical and folk. So the same thing, classical aaya, pehle ya folk aaya. Nahi classical, nahi folk, no folk. So we said, chalo, let's do Jugalbandi. So we actually got someone like Malini Avasthi, who's a queen of UP folk. We introduced her for the first time to Shujat Khan. And we put a band together for them. So they did a set of UP folk songs. Rahul Sharma played the Santoor play. He played with Gulzar Ghani. They did Kashmiri folk. So we had, combos like that, which again went down very well. The next year we did a tribute to the Guru. So we had Osman Mir come in and do. So it kind of, it evolved like that. So everyone came away from Paddy Fields every year. And they said the experience and the music and the food. The three things that... are unique to Paddy Fields. Yeah. So it went extremely well. We're talking about trying to revive it now because it shut down in lockdown and stuff. It's very expensive and, so dekhte.
But you've done more.
Yeah, so we did, like I said, so YouTube, interestingly, after we'd done Paddy Fields, so when they launched YouTube Music, I don't know if you remember, but they had this big party at the Taj and they had a lot of performers and stuff. So they asked me, they said, we want to showcase folk music too. And, Leah Cohen and Alex Warner, and he was Leah heads YouTube Music. So they're all seasoned music folk, from the US and the UK and different parts of the world. So, like, can you show them folk? But obviously that evening was commercial music with Bacha was performing, and I think Guru Randhawa was there. And, they had anyway. So the next day at the hotel in Loparel, next to the St. Regis, I think, up in the Chota ballroom, I think it seats about 40-50 people, whatever. So we did a set. We did Mame, we did Megha Dalton, and then I got Justin and Uday to do a medley of Goan, Gujarati, Punjabi, Marathi. I can show you those videos. We had the entire team, the entire international community dancing, doing bhangra, doing lavani. It was just wild, absolutely wild. So, there's a lot in folk, but if you do it too traditionally, people won't actually vibe with it because, like I said, the language is a problem. So we sit with the musicians as much as we can to make sure that the music is appealing. The music has a commercial edge to it, and it's appealing enough for people to kind of. And then we try and explain what the songs are. That's the brief to the artist. Always tell them what it's about. So in fact, when Shubha was doing one of the songs that she composed, it's called Banjini. It's about a woman who can't conceive. And then she's thrown out of her house, and she's so upset. She walks into the thing. She meets a tigress, and she says, "Eat me up, because my Banjani woman." And the tigress says, "No, I can't, because if I eat you, I might not be able to have children." So by the time Shubha told the story of what the song was, you could see people. So that gives you that feeling that what you're doing is touching people, which is important.
Take us through the 90s decade, the work you were involved in.
And that was great fun. So, like I always say, I think we were very fortunate in that we didn't have financial pressure. The amount of shit we got away with, we did what we wanted to do. We wanted to have fun. And I think we were fortunate to work with a very talented bunch of people. Actually, what happened was the guy who set up Magnasound, Shashi Gopal. So he'd been in the business for 14, 15 years before that. He was with HMV, etc. He always maintained that we have the talent, we need to harness it, and we need to create a pop music industry of our own. And fortunately, MTV had come in at that time on the Star Network. The Star Network was beaming into 6 countries. Shashi happened to be in Hong Kong. He met MTV and they said, "We're coming down to India." He said, "Come." So he told me, he said, "You got to meet them, you got to do this." I actually went to the airport and picked them up. Drove them back to the Taj. We had a long conversation and stuff. And by then, of course, Shashi had come in and we said, so we had an album by Jasmine Barucha called Alien Desire. So we said, let's do a video for that. So Shashi said, "ठीक है, 75,000 rupees देता हूँ, video बनाते हैं." So again, one long story, coincidences. Ken Ghosh called him, did the video. Shashi was so happy. We paid him $80,000. He said, 75 bola tha. Ye le 80,000. Big deal. So these guys came. I got them to the office the next day and they saw the video and they said, "Oh, we love it. We'll definitely run it." And we're happy. So they said, "But do you have something in your local language?" So we said, "But your MTV, won't you want English?" They said, "No, we want local language stuff." So we just finished the Thanda Thanda Pani album. So I played Thanda Thanda Pani and I said, we were thinking we want to do this video. They said, "Because you're going to 6 countries, which 5 don't understand your language. It sounds like a cover of Ice Ice Baby. So it's not really going to cut any ice." So they said, "Okay." So I played Dil Dhadke. I said, "What about this?" They said, "That's your song."
Yeah.
So that's how Dil Dhadke happened. And then it went crazy. So Alien Desire, kind of a crazy album. It wasn't so big anyway, etc. But Dil Dhadke and then Thanda Thanda Pani just went through the roof. And that's really what started the whole process. And after that, it was Shweta. So I actually saw Shweta at a live concert at Rang Bhavan. And she was fantastic. I said, and she'd done an album on CBS pre-MTV and stuff like that, which hadn't worked. But then Shweta happened, and Suchitra happened, Alisha happened. So, Bombay Girl first, then Made in India. Daler happened, and it was amazing. So Daler also was a funny one. Interestingly, Jawahar Vattal got us Baba Saigal, and he got us Daler. And he did Deewane To Deewane Hai for Shweta after that. So people don't actually recognize the contribution that he made, but his was a huge contribution to the Indian pop music scene. Ken Ghosh, I never tire of saying it. We did 51 videos with Ken. So he was very responsible for making the music video what it became. Remember, we were doing the video for Manjula. He was editing Baba Segal's from Dr. Dhingra. He was doing something. It was no great shot. I didn't know what he was doing. So I was sitting there, I was watching. He reversed the shot. So, he was doing something. He reversed the shot and suddenly, wow. Ken had a lot of contribution on that. And it was just fun, We used to be at the office. So, daftar band karte the. We used to move to my bachelor pad. And the ideas used to start, the alcohol used to start, the stupid ideas used to start. What all we did, we did such nonsense.
How long would it take for a song to be done and then a music video shot and released?
Tough to say, but see, the thing was, we always wanted to get it right. So while we had a lot of fun, we had a lot of thought went into it. So it wasn't really just, doing anything for the sake of anything. In fact, Ken and I used to sit down and argue a lot about concepts, about stuff. I think the alcohol industry must have definitely benefited from those conversations. But we fought a lot. We fought a lot over budgets. We fought about everything. And the one thing that I think we got right was positioning the artist every time. So, to me, what was very important was how was the artist coming across, because we were a record company, we were not into live shows. But even then, one knew the sustenance for the artist is going to be his concerts, because we were going to do an album a year. That was our deal, 3 years, 3 albums. But then the artist had to take it forward. So we were very careful about what the artist wears, how he comes across, because an artist has to carry his music. When you look at Daler, right? There's no way in the world you imagine he sings classical music or he sings ghazals or whatever. He's the fantastic ghazal singer. But, he carries his music. Lucky Ali carries his music. Baba Saigal carries his music. So there was a lot of thought that went to it. Maybe knowingly or unknowingly, but there was a lot of thought and care that went into the songs. The selection of songs on the album. What will be the opening song? What will be the second? What will be the third? What will be the fourth? In many cases, we didn't start the album with the video song. And in those days, we normally used to make... Shweta asked me yesterday, she said, why did we only do one video for Johnny Joke? I said, you idiot. It was difficult enough doing that, than rather going and spending money. So I think we spent a lot of... We were almost like artist managers, what they would say, what they would do, what they would wear, etc. For Shan, for Tanha Dil. My God, we took 2 years on the album. I took 4 months on the video. 4 months, because I wasn't willing to let it boom. I said, no, everything has to be perfect. And that is something that you can't substitute. There's no guarantee of success. But an artist can see when you're making the effort and when you're not making the effort. I think that to us is very important. The lengths we went through, you've never heard of an album called Tufani Taxi Wala.
No.
So Jawahar Vattal calls me one day. So he's a composer producer in Delhi. I've shifted to Bombay by then. He says, मैं तेरे को एक गाना भेज रहा हूँ. So he sends me a cassette with a song called Sunita Vinita या पड़ोस वाली गीता. So I listened to the song and it's a out and out what we call a tapori song. With the doles and all. It's a fantastic song. And in my head I get this vision of shooting a video on Marine Drive with taxis lined up and all the taxi drivers dancing. So, okay, great. So, we used to travel by cabs in those days. So, I started talking to the cabbies. And I said, in my head, I don't know why I got Tapori Taxi Wala. So, I said, Tapori, is it a good word, bad word? I'm a North Indian, I don't know. So, they said, no, I'm not. So, I changed it to Tufani. Tufani Taxi Wala. And the poor guy who was singing, he was from Kanpur. Right? He was a college student. उसको बना दिया टैक्सी वाला. Okay? We got him down to Bombay. We did a photo shoot with a cab in a uniform and all. That wasn't good enough. Unfortunately, decision was, no, he's got no personality, so we won't make a video. So that whole video idea only went out of the room. But we stayed with the taxi wala. So we went to A.L. Quadras, who was the secretary of the taxi union in Bombay. And we said, we are releasing an album by one of your taxi drivers. You come and inaugurate. Look at the guts. You come and inaugurate it. You do the release at the racecourse. Poor chap, he didn't know. He said, okay. So he came. And we said, okay, so we will, and in those days, all those TV channels used to be Giant TV and this one, that, so we called all of them. We had about a dozen cameras covering. So in advance, they told us, you know what, we have enough space in the race course. We'll make the guy drive a cab up and down and all that. Because the story is that he's a taxi wala. Everyone thought he was a taxi wala. The Kaushal, you'll have to, his name was Kaushal Bajpai. So he said, Kaushal, you'll have to drive. I don't know how to drive. Oh, shit. Sent him to driving school. For 1 week, he learned how to drive. Okay. So we go over there. We put this out. And we are telling stories. We were sitting in a cab. This guy was singing. And India Today carried it. The television channels carried it. Quadras, poor chap, he bought it. Lies through our teeth. But there's no video. So the album didn't do well. But can you imagine the fun we had doing all this? No pressure. No boss telling us kitna paisa kharcha kya. So hats off to Shashi Gopal. I mean, he saw it. He gave us that elbow room. And we had a blast. It was just fun.
Whose idea was it to call Baba Sehgal Baba Sehgal?
His own.
Right. So what is his name?
Harjeet Singh Sehgal. His name is Harjeet Singh Sehgal. And in fact, we did a session at All About Music, which you should, I don't know, it's not available. But he explained the whole thing as to why Baba. He wanted Baba. His father didn't want Baba Sehgal. So even after he became a hit, the Baba Sehgal, his dad was upset. So anyway.
Wow. How did you get into the music business?
Oh God. I used to be a journalist. So interestingly, I was in college. I used to love writing. And one of the guys in college, his uncle was the editor of Sun magazine. And they wanted some campus reporting. So he said, tu karega? I said, okay. So I went and met them, the Weekly Sun. And I started writing for them. So we finished our third year exams. I was doing economics in Sri Ram College of Commerce. After I finished the exams, they hadn't paid for the last couple of articles. So I went to collect my money. And the editor said, kya kar raha abhi? I said, I'm waiting for my results. So he said, why don't you join us till your results come? How long? 2 months. Come join us. Narendra Kusnur and I started our careers on the same day in Sun magazine. Okay, so we were both journalists. And I used to write about music, we used to review albums, etc. So I was pally with the guys at CBS. So I went to CBS one day and the guy says, President is coming tomorrow, day after, whatever. Come and meet him at the Taj. So in your head, you think CBS means some old American bald guy with specs will come down from New York. Okay, fine. So went to the Taj. Went there. Shashi Gopal sitting over there. Good. I was like, oh God, okay. And there was a bottle of Black Label. There was the guy who was heading CBS in Delhi. There was me, there was Shashi Gopal, and then one of our dealers, Bluebird and Company, was very pally with Shashi. We polished off one bottle of whiskey. Shashi and I got talking and blah, 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 blah. 2 days later, he calls. He says, do you want a job? Sure. So my dad had retired. He'd left Delhi. He was in Kasauli. I had nothing to do. I was a bachelor. Music industry. Big Michael Jackson fan. So CBS, Michael Jackson. So we actually released Bad on the same day as the rest of the world, first time in India. So yeah, great fun. The industry was fun. Today I find that I don't find the same excitement in, the young people working in the industry. I think it's become a lot formulaic. It's become very hard-nosed. I don't see the fun.
Yeah. So how did the Hindi pop era end?
It ended for reasons. So there were 3 reasons, I think, that did it. One was that the big support that we got was MTV and Channel V. They stopped getting advertising because they weren't playing film music and they were playing international and Indian pop music. So the money by the brands was being put into channels where film music was being played.
Right.
So these guys tried, if you remember, they started playing film music. Channel V rebranded itself as a youth channel. Didn't work. So your support system vanished. The second thing was that we had a lot of fresh sound. So like I said, Salim Suleiman, Ram Sampath, Shankara Sanlo, etc. They were doing music which sounded different from Bollywood music. In those days, Nadeem Shravan was big, Jatin Lalit was big, Anand Milind were big, etc. So they had a certain kind of filmy sound, we used to call it. Right? These boys were creating westernized pop sounds. But Bollywood is always looking for freshness. You know, these boys who were doing music that sounded different started doing film music. So then film music and pop music sounded the same.
True.
Here you had Shah Rukh Khan in front of the camera. There you had people like Atul Churamani in front of the camera. Right? So there was no chance. So that kind of was the big problem. And then like everything else, the Ghazal era ended the same way because everybody and anybody became a pop star. You know, so you got a lot of garbage into the system. So that then obviously has to play out. So that's what killed it. And of course, the business changed, the format changed. So when you went from physical to digital, and digital hadn't come up, the costs were going up. Recording costs, video costs. Everyone wanted fancy looking videos and stuff like that. How do you recover the money? Because back in the day, you sold 40 lakhs of something that was a hit. Now you couldn't sell 5,000. So obviously, economics worked against you.
So what era are we in now?
I think we're in very solidly the independent singer-songwriter era, and you see that all over you.
Yeah.
So that's something that's going to keep growing.
Do you feel like you do something you did 3 decades ago in today's environment?
It won't work. See, everything has a time and place. So what worked then cannot work now. It shouldn't.
Yeah.
You know, obviously because everything has changed. Your consumption platforms have changed. Your economics have changed. You know, everything has changed. The consumer has changed.
Yeah.
Right? So there was a time when, so for people like us, we still think the Beatles and Michael Jackson created the greatest music in history. If you ask a 12-year-old today, he probably doesn't know who they are. So it can't be the same. You know, you can't use the same yardstick on creating. But there are, of course, opportunities today to do things and do different things. So that's what people who are with today's music have to explore. And, I always say this, but somewhere the music industry has let go to technology companies. Today, technology companies run the music business.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's very interesting because their whole model, like we were discussing, was about engagement. Engagement, advertising, ad rates, which is not your world. So you asked who signed with us? Leslie Lewis has signed with us. So the other day we went to Believe. He's distributing through Believe. And we had a little listening session of an album that he's coming out with. And Vivek Raina, who heads Believe in India, said, this is so interesting because we normally don't discuss legacy artists and what kind of marketing and promotion will work for them, which is going to be different from what will happen to Osho Jain and Anup Jain and, boys like that. So you have to have a differentiator. But if you go by what platforms tell you, there's a formula.
Yeah.
15 days before you must do a promo, 13 days before do a shout out, 12 days before do this. Everyone's doing the same thing. Whether you're singing classical, I'm singing hip hop, you're singing, something else. So I think we've got to step back and say music has its own character.
Yeah.
Every kind of music has its own requirement. It cannot fall into a formula. The minute you put it in a formula, it'll die. That's what happened in the music video also. Everything never got music videos. But when everything started getting music videos, it didn't work.
So what would you tell the emerging artists today?
Individuality, I always say it. Become an individual that I can look up to and say, this guy is unique. Yashraj Mukhate. He's unique. He's absolutely unique.
Right.
There is no second Yashraj Mukhate. Right? This is what an artist with identity does. He creates his own identity. Emiwe Bantai. He has his own identity. He's not just one among a million rappers. So you've got to be able to have your own character. The basics don't change. You carry your music, the way you dress, the way and we look at music videos today. I'm no one to criticize, but everything looks the same. You have to do it cheap, so you're doing it off a cell phone.
Yeah.
What's the cheapest way to do it? Do it in a studio, in a recording studio.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily convey the sentiment of the song. If you look at the music videos that especially Ken used to make, there was no story. It's not a feature film. It's about the singer. At least 50% of the video was the singer singing to camera. So you were establishing an identity. And then there were the lyrics and the music of the song, which created a mood. The story captured the mood of the song. It wasn't about the story. It was about what you were trying to say in the song. You look at Suchitra's Dole Dole. Okay, just listen to that song. Look at Dum Tara, look at Aha, Suchitra.
Yeah.
Same Suchitra, 3 different albums, 3 kinds of music, 3 very different videos.
Right.
None of them was a story. It had the element of a story, just so that there's a little wow factor at the end. But it's about the song. And that's why I say Ken was a great music video director, because as a dancer, he was doing things with the edit, which a lot of people didn't get. Little things in the music, he would amplify. So it was about enhancing the song. A music video must enhance your song. If it's not enhancing your song, don't bother. Do a lyric video, because YouTube is very important.
Right.
So quality. And like I said, individuality. Don't compromise.
What about handling the business themselves, since most people are unrepresented today?
Yeah, so it's become more and more difficult. Like I said, with so many artists, are there enough artist managers in the world to handle all these artists? They're not, right? But one thing I will say is that there are enough organizations out there to help an artist not spend most of his time trying to run his business. The artist's job is to create music. The artist's job is to go and perform.
Yeah.
And I always, I used to kid with the artist. I say, I go to office every day. How many days in a month are you performing? To me, that's your office. If you're not performing, sorry, you're not working. So your work is not to look at metadata, to look at mera playlisting kitna hua. That's not your job. Okay, there are enough people. If you're signed with a distributor, please understand his money is going to come from selling your product. It's the same concept, right?
Yeah.
The distributor has no advertising money coming to him.
Yeah.
Right? So he's going to push you. He's going to try and playlist you as much as he can. His hands are tied. 120,000 new songs a day. So don't expect the world. But leave him to do his job. Don't keep critically analyzing his job. That's what a lot of artists do. They're getting into that part of the business. Forget it. You haven't got me a sing deal. You haven't got me a sing deal. No, I haven't, because nobody actually wants a song recorded in reverse in Japanese in their film. I can't help it. No, my song is made for sync. Okay, I didn't know there were songs like that. But
Yeah, there are.
So the thing is that leave it to someone to do the business end of it.
Yeah.
Keep honing your skills. What is going to make you your money? Not by sitting on the distributor's tail. If people don't like your song, they don't like your song. Accept it.
Yeah.
You will have hits, you will have flops. Don't labor too much on it. That whole thing, throw away your rearview mirror. No point if you keep looking back. Look ahead. Move forward.
What are some of the technological innovations and opportunities that excite you today in the industry?
So technologically, I think AI is exciting. AI is exciting, especially for addressing the piracy situation, I think. We need to focus on that, because first consolidate what you have and then start building with it. Right? So I would say we will be able to fight piracy through AI in ways that hasn't been done before. So to me, that is very exciting. And it links in well with all the other initiatives that one is trying to work with. The second thing is about creativity. I'm not so big a fan about creating stuff which is in people's voices and sounds like this and sounds like that, because we have the originals, we love the originals, and I don't know. But I think in terms of the presentation of the music, it can be fantastic. So I'm also helping a friend called Shatadru Sarkar with his company, which is called Metadata. They've created something called an artist verse. They've just launched yesterday or day before. They've just launched Bikram Ghosh. I think they're calling it the artist verse. So they've called his planet Bikram. Go in there, it's beautiful. So it's Bikram talking about various things, showcasing things that you don't get to see. And you're actually walking through his studio and stuff like that, So these are things that will get enhanced with technology. So I think it's more about the presentation. It's about the ability to interact with the artists more meaningfully. That is exciting as far as technology is concerned. So when I'm talking creative, I think it's from the presentation and marketing point of view. The whole superfan business, etc., that will benefit a lot from artificial intelligence.
Nice. Can we take some time to come up with a metadata etiquette that any artist can easily follow?
The word easy is something that is relative.
Yeah.
If you want to get paid, you have to do a certain amount of work.
Yeah.
Okay? Accept it. The work we are only asking you to do is to fill in your metadata. It can't be so difficult. Just to write down that you composed the song and Mr. So-and-so wrote the song.
Yeah.
How difficult is it? And to give me an ISRC code, because I'm not a distributor, you have to give me the ISRC code.
Yeah.
कल करता हूँ, परसों करता हूँ, पैसा नहीं दे रहा है तू. Weird, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. So the thing is that number one, artists have to gear up to the fact that they have to give their metadata out.
I think it's like hygiene. Right.
It is.
Yeah.
Okay. It's like saying in a song, should you mix it and master it or should you not mix and master it? You will be anal about your mixing and mastering.
Right.
Just add metadata to that M. Mixing, mastering and metadata. एक साथ कर दो. Not very difficult.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. Second thing is that because we have a lot of garbage metadata globally, I think there is about, I think the number was 14% or maybe it was more. 28%. 28%, I think, of global revenues that go into societies cannot be identified. Because we don't have good metadata. Right? So, strangely, I'm actually heading the music and sound sector for the government's Bureau of Indian Standards, where one of the things we're working on is on standardization of metadata.
Right. Yeah.
All we're saying is that every name has an associated number with it.
Correct.
And these are global standards that exist. So, a recording has an ISRC, the
Yeah.
International Standard Recording Code.
Yeah.
The works, which is the composition and lyrics, have an ISWC, the International Standard Works Code. The CAE number we were talking about earlier is now
Yeah.
called an IPI number,
Yeah.
an interested party identifier, which identifies composer, author, and publisher.
Yeah.
The performer has an IPN. So all we're trying to do is create a metadata format in which we are suggesting that these fields become mandatory. So when they become mandatory, you will identify it perfectly because your composer, author is linked to your works, is linked to your sound recording, is linked to your performer. So the chances of anything getting wrongly identified almost vanish.
Yeah.
Okay. So going forward, that's easy. For legacy, again, there will need to be an initiative from the industry itself that
Yeah.
says, so I have a bit of an idea about the way we would like to do it. And the other big thing is about traditional work. So interestingly, traditional work gets claimed by name. So if you do a traditional song, you do a Hanuman Chalisa, probably a Saregama will say copyright is ours. It is for their recording.
Yeah.
That day Sandesh Chandelier did Ek Omkar and Sony Music claimed it because of the film where Rahman has produced an arrangement of Ek Omkar. Now globally they have something called an arrangement. They claim the arrangement of a traditional work.
Yeah.
I think it's a bit complicated. So
Yeah.
what we are recommending Let's assume that lyrics are traditional. So when we register the work, we say lyrics are traditional. But the composition that we do, we split it between traditional and the new composer or artist. I said, we have
Fair
a lot
enough,
of Indian
yeah.
classical music. So if you have a Rag Bhageshri, the rendition that Shubha Mudgal does today could be very different from the one that Ustad Ghulam Ali Khan did. So why do you say it's the same? So if we differentiate it by crediting Shubha with her rendition, the composition, the ISWC changes.
Yeah.
And then as the copyright owner, I only claim my ISWC. I don't claim Rag Bhageshri.
Yeah.
Okay. So they said it sounds like a brilliant solution. So that's one of the things we're putting together in the note. The note is being drafted now. And interestingly, WIPO, CSAC, everyone told us that the initiative that you're taking, if your government is taking this is going to be the first in the world, because no other government has actually done this. And interestingly, a lot of people we were talking to were in London. So PRS, DDEX, CSAC, WIPO, a lot of people were based in the UK. Last September, the government of UK announced exactly the same thing. With the Intellectual Property Office, they're creating a standard for metadata. So the benefit that we have now is that there are definitely two countries doing this.
Yeah.
The fear of people, so when I spoke to Spotify, I spoke to the distributors, they said that, listen, if you're saying we should reject the data, now this is something no other country will say, but I am pushing for it, saying that we should reject metadata which has incomplete identifiers. Otherwise, nobody will follow it. It's just a recommendation. कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता. But if we start rejecting it, then people will be forced to do it, which is what we want. Right? Anyway, so we'll see how that plays out. But the global company said we cannot do a development for one country. So if you are saying India will reject the content if the identifiers are not there,
It will have to be international.
it'll have to be a global thing.
Yeah.
So at that time, no other country was talking. Now the UK is saying we will put the identifiers in place. So at least that is a relief, because global companies will say, okay, so they'll be able to ingest the identifiers. They'll have columns to put in the numbers against the names.
Yeah.
And Vivek from Believe was very open. He said, all you're saying is put a number against the name, because you're putting all the details in. So a very practical way of looking at it. And I think that's the attitude that the industry needs. But we need to do it collectively. Like I always say, this is not something anyone is forcing down your throat. See the benefit to you. If you can identify people correctly, you can, there's no leakage. Otherwise, that question you asked me earlier, how do you know the money is not going anywhere else?
Yeah.
At least block what you can block first.
Yeah.
Block that leak by having quality metadata. So I think that's what we're moving towards. And it's very critical because...
Yeah.
And the other problem that we have today is piracy. So a lot of people are uploading songs on platforms saying it's theirs. They're messing with it a little bit. If I start speaking, then I put a Saregama song, but nobody's checking it, can't check, whatever. My thing is, we'll catch it. So artificial intelligence, that's another thing that we're talking about. Artificial intelligence will be able to catch the piracy. But then, do you have the metadata correct?
Yeah.
So that you're pointing to the correct person. पकड़ भी लिया और फिर गलत लोगों को दे दिया.
It was actually Ashil Fowler from whom I learned the term audio fingerprinting.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the whole point, and I think now with AI, that will get enhanced. So I think we have great opportunity, but get your metadata right. And as artists, please, it is not a burden, it is a necessity.
Yeah.
3 M's. Mixing, mastering and metadata.
It's a lovely note to end on. Thank you so much.
Pleasure. Thank you.